to Take the Helm podcast, where we will share stories, experiences, data, and best practices with industry leaders, friends, and dealers. From market conditions to insights, leadership development to tough conversations, take the helm.
Hey, good day, everybody. John Greene here with Lead Helm. And if it's podcast time, you know that means I am excited, always excited to talk about great things, digital sales process, opportunity in the digital space, so forth. So I'm excited about that as usual. Also really excited because Adam, who's joining me today, Adam's our head of business development, director of business development at Lead Helm. And Adam, how are you today, by the way?
Well, John, thank you. Excited for this conversation today. Good stuff.
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting. We're doing these and we've got a pretty set outline of educational things or tools or process things to share, which are really great. And today's a little bit different than that. There's a couple of those little nuggets in here, but the primary reason for today is to share some of our thoughts on the NPDA Connect event, right? So National Powersports Dealers Association hosted the inaugural Dealer Connect event last week, 20th through the 22nd in Columbus, Ohio. And it was a cool event, right? And we're just going to talk about that, right? Who was there? What did we talk about? What did we learn? What did we teach? And first of all, it was a beautiful weekend in Columbus from what we could see through the windows, right?
Yeah, you could see the sun shining, saw the foliage flying in. It was nice, you know. It was beautiful.
The tree color was really pretty. We got there right during the Columbus Marathon. So that was an interesting, trying to get in and out of downtown hotels with a bunch of roads blocked and so forth. But this was hats off, I would say, to the NPDA and the board in particular for taking the initiative and creating the event and pulling it off really very, very well in such a short amount of time, right? The logistics were good, the accommodations, the hotel, the attendance, the food, the sessions, all that stuff was really good and not a small task for that gang. And
shout out to Tigra on that one, right? She pulled it off. That food was phenomenal too. We got to admit.
The food from a hotel standpoint, the food actually was really good. Yes. Right. You keep people fed, then they're generally happy. Yeah. So this was a mix, right? So you had NPDA board members. So the entire board was there. Most of those are still dealers. Some still actively involved, some a little bit more passively involved, but still dealers. And you had dealers, right? We had Harley dealers, we had Powersports dealers from all different parts of the country that were there in attendance, so that was cool. And then we had vendors, partners, right? So we were there as a partner. We are a partner with the NPDA, and it was really cool for me, and I think probably for everybody, but you've got some people who've been in this for a long time, right? And from an operations standpoint, I've been in this for quite some time. So to see some old dealer friends and some old, industry partner folks there, it's always great to reconnect and reminisce and share some stories. So the different breaks and the lunches and so forth, just great to just a little check in with everybody and the new folks that were there. But what was your take just with the gathering piece of that?
Yeah, no, I think it was exactly that, right? You've been clearly in the industry longer than I have, so you know a little bit more people. John, you showed up and you're like the rock star at the rock concert walking through the place. Like everyone knows John Greene. But that was kind of cool seeing your interactions. But also it was good for me because I've communicated with a lot of these people, but only through like LinkedIn or email or phone conversations. So it was a lot more conversation, but personal conversation, getting to know people on another level aside from business as well, which was really neat. Like you find out a lot of people do the same things. We all ride, or we all hunt, we all fish, we do all of these things. And it's really cool just getting that personal side, right? Family time, what you guys do in your off time, but also how busy everyone is and what direction everyone's taking in the industry was really awesome to learn as well, right? Like, a lot of these guys are as forward thinking. I like to think we're very forward thinking in the digital space, but to hear a lot of the conversations coming out of what people were saying was very similar to what our direction is as well. And that was really neat. It was really neat to see that from a younger demographic, but also the much older demographic as well. And I like that, because not too many people are that forward thinking.
Now, I got a couple thoughts on that, Adam. I think one is just the community side, right?
Yeah.
We don't really forget that, but we don't, with COVID times and some of the OEMs changing their thoughts on in-person dealer meetings and so on and so forth, things moving virtual, which I understand there's efficiencies and so forth that come with that. That's great. But when you get the people together in person, the sense of community around power sports in general, right? Who are the players? What does it do to the consumer out there, right? These aren't just products that get sold, right? These are lifestyles. This is community. This is a new group of friends. This is a new social area for people. And to have some of that and kind of reflect on the fact that we get to be part of fostering that community, right, with education and convening together and cool product and technology and all that stuff. So that was just, I think that's gratifying and exciting to be part of, to say, you know what, this is a really cool thing. Look at all these cool people, and we're all trying to do the same thing and move the industry forward in a very positive way. So love that side of it.
Yeah.
And, we got to be there, lead helm, as a vendor, right? So we had our booth set up, right? Substantial booth, I might add. Substantial. Adam and I can attest to the construction timeline for the booth setup and tear down, but that's a different story. We should have videoed that.
We should have videoed
and
that,
just had that comedy.
I don't know. That was a little embarrassing to say.
Yes. Anyway, we got it set up. Looked great. But we're also there as I had an opportunity to be one of the presenters. So it was a combination of education sessions and networking sessions and so forth that went on there. And when you're talking about where the industry's going or being forward thinking, I saw a unique combination, right, of some of what I would call the fundamentals, right? Because some of the education sessions, and look, hats off to everybody that did an education session there. We had data information presented. We had sales process stuff. We had P&A. We had digital sales. Had some unbelievable information from the NPA, the auction guys, just with all kinds of things. And in there were some things, look, there's still some fundamental things that are tried and true that we have to do inside of our businesses, okay? And you start to overlay that with new thinking, really brought from some of the vendors and some of the technology that's out there, that they're exposing them to the dealers. The dealers are grabbing them, and the dealers are starting to talk about that. So it really is it's a unique blend right now of, again, there's basics we have to do, but we have to make sure that we continue to keep an eye on what can we leverage from a resource standpoint inside the industry that may have not been available before. It was cool. So let's just talk a little bit, right? What was the feel of the dealers? What was your take on it, right? You're there, you're talking to the dealers. What's their frame of mind or their sentiment about today and looking forward? Because kind of the overarching theme of this was plan for great success in 2025. So maybe just what was your take on how are dealers feeling?
Yeah, I think there's, you got a mixed bag as well of feelings and what's going on, because you're looking at two sides of it as well, right? You have guys that are selling Polaris, Yamaha, Suzuki, but then you also have guys that are selling just straight Harley. And I think there's some frustration that's due from the Harley side. You know, you have a lot of those guys that are dealing with a lot of things coming out of Harley and coming out of corporate, and just, you know, there are a lot of things mixing around in the background. So you have floor plans, you have, you know, inventory levels, you have all these things that are happening, and those guys have some concerns, but also it's like, okay, well, how are we planning on alleviating some of this stress, and what are we doing to fix that, and how? And I think that is the biggest gap that I noticed, was no one has a real plan in place for 2025. No one's really like looking that far ahead to say, okay, well, what are we doing in each one of these areas of the dealership? Because you have service, you have motor clothes, you have the straight showroom with all the bikes on it, right? So how are you separating each one to also then work unified together to get the most out of it all, right? And I think that's where a big gap is happening. And coming out of some of those educational sides, I know we'll talk about that later. I think a lot was covered to give dealerships more perspective on what to do and how to prepare with where we are and what's lacking in that sense. So I think the general consensus and feeling is there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's still a lot of people out there that we can sell to, but how can we get that moving faster? And that's where, you know, we talked about lead helm a lot with guys that I talk to, at least.
Yeah.
So there was that side for sure. A lot of frustrations just in moving inventory, I think, is the biggest part.
Yeah, it's definitely, we've seen some challenges, right, as an industry. And when I say we, because look, we still have some Harley stores in our family, if you will. So it hasn't been the easiest year, right? We've seen some margin compression. We see expenses. We see some traffic a bit, some leads, some floor traffic, some doors counters, and so forth. Some of that is, you know, consumers. Some of that is interest rate. There's an election. There's some concern about cost of everything, right? So there's a bit of hesitation to spend on want-based products. So that's in fact true. That's there. But I saw tremendous resolve, I think, on the dealers. Yeah. And they took time out to come and learn and be students of the business, not just from the presenters, but what they can learn from one another over a drink at the bar or over a sandwich at lunch is always of huge value. So I applaud them for that. And I think I would say they are cautiously optimistic about 2025. And I think they did come to help start to formulate, how do I approach 2025, right? Sure. What are my expectations? And I think there were a lot of tools that were given there. And the last podcast that we did, Scott and I did together, was all about planning for 2025, right? How do we do this? Because you should start that planning the beginning of October. So if you're not fully entrenched in your planning at the time of this recording, you are a bit late in our opinion on that standpoint. I think from a theme, I'll give you my thoughts on that, like of what was there. I said it before, right? All traffic critical. Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the interesting pieces from the NPA, right? They track consumer spending. And they had a graph, and I don't have a picture of it right here, but it was fascinating to look at. Consumers are still spending money at a pretty consistent rate, even going all the way back to pre-COVID, 18, 19 years. And then we had COVID, okay, and everybody thinks everybody spent more during COVID. They didn't spend more dollars, they just spent the dollars differently, okay? So during COVID, people bought goods versus services, right?
Right.
So I couldn't buy a concert ticket. That's a service. I couldn't buy an airline ticket. I can't really travel anywhere. That's a service. I'm not really going out to dinner. Those are service things, but they bought goods. They bought bicycles, and they bought boats, and they bought campers, and they bought motorcycles, and they bought ATV. They bought all that stuff. And now what we're seeing is they're shifting that spend pattern. Dollars are the same, but it's shifting back to more service-based things, which we don't sell service other than service. We sell goods. So it's an interesting piece. So lots of discussion about how do we engage with this potential audience? How do we continue to drive interest into the community, the sport, the lifestyle, whatever you want to call it? We'll hit on something at the end of this that was a big announcement from NPDA, which some of you've probably heard about, but we'll share it at the end. That's a long-term strategy to drive interest into this space, because we all need more consumers over time. Who's the next generation and the next generation of buyer, just for longevity. All traffic is critical. Fundamentals are important. Expense control also critical. And how can we better leverage resources that are available? We're kind of the takeaways of talking with vendors and dealers. And any other thoughts on that, Adam?
I feel that's pretty much sums it up in my opinion as well.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what we presented. Okay. Because look, we, like you guys, are in the sales business, so we like to sell lead helm, either as full service or as subscription or anything that you necessarily want. But our presentation was really, we just did an update on kind of the trends around digital, right? What are consumers doing? We know a vast majority of them start their journey online, but what do they do while they're there? And we're not going to go through the whole presentation here. Where are they spending their time? And the overarching piece of that is the battle for floor traffic is increasingly being fought online, right? Customers are there. They're there for a while. They're sending out leads to multiple places. They're looking at your review sites. They're doing all kinds of things because in their mind, they're trying to narrow it down because they want to visit one, maybe two stores. Okay.
Yep.
So if they've got to lead out to 4 or 5 of them and you're not the 1 or 2 they go visit, you lost on that one. So we have to be better in that space. So we talked about that. We talked about the phases of the digital sales process, from capturing leads to nurturing leads to converting leads, so forth. But the big piece of it that tied into the planning, and I think we've done a bit of I say we, specifically Lead Helm, and I think we, the royal we, industry-wide, I think we've done a bit of disservice as we've introduced and have been driving more conversation around a digital traffic log. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
The digital traffic log is not just a digitized version of how we record floor traffic. That's not what we mean. It does 2 things. And we've really only ever focused on one primarily. We focus on the fact that a digital traffic log is where you record the activities that take place in the digital sales process, right? Different KPIs in that process than on the floor. So if it's a different KPIs, it needs a different log. Fine. We need to record those things, right? Websites, visits, leads, response time, set appointment, kept appointment, those kinds of things. But what we really focused on is how do I take this digital traffic log and use it for a planning tool, right? Which is what you were talking about earlier. How do we start to wrap our brains around how much potential do I have through my digital doorway, right? How many people do I need to attend effectively to that? What can I expect from a conversion rate? And we got so much support, not just on that side of it, but from really everybody there, the absolute need for 2 traffic logs. Right. So talk about that for a minute, because that was one of your big takeaways. You're like, I think they finally get it. They have to have both.
Right. And I think, again, I'll throw another shout out. Schoolie from Garage Composites touched on it first, that first night we were there.
Yeah.
He hit a home run with how he explained it as well. He's like, you guys have a traffic log, but you also have a digital traffic log. And if you don't, you need one, right? Because we have multiple tools in our toolbox, because a screwdriver isn't going to hammer a nail, and that hammer isn't going to screw in a screw. So you have multiple tools for different jobs. And that analogy applies to this, right? And it's like you have your traffic log for your floor traffic, people coming in. You want to log all of that information so you know what's happening, how to plan accordingly. You do the same for your digital side. And the way they work symbiotically is necessary, right? You cannot have one without the other. You need to have both, especially in this day and age where you have a dealership, you have a website, you have web traffic, you have lead sources. You're spending all of this money on those areas, a lot of money. Don't you want to know what's actually happening in that world to actually say, okay, we need to sell this many units, these months out of the year, 12 months out of the year. How are we going to attain that? How much traffic do we need to get that? But also, it dials down even further, right? And not to go into the whole digital traffic log, but you need to know unique visitors. You need to know what's happening on those unique visitors, because people can go to your website, but are they engaging with your website? That's the side you want to make sure you're capturing, because those then convert into actual leads. What I thought was funny when you ask the question to the group, is really funny. You're like, who knows the percentage of actual, conversions? Like what turns into an actual lead? There's guys behind me that are like 30%, and people are saying 40% or 20%. And it was like, holy cow, no one has any idea, right? Like, and no one knows because they're just not tracking it. And it's not a bad thing to not know. It's a good thing to be aware now, so you do know, and now you know what to look for. But that number's 1 to 3%. On a great day, it's 3%. Maybe 1.5% is average. So that's not very many. So you need to really know what you're doing from a planning side. And it goes back to what you're saying before, with your inventory, with what your goals are for each month, to know, okay, can we actually hit that goal? And how can we do that digitally to impact that goal as well? So I think there's just a lot that came out of what Garage Composites said, a bunch of other educational pieces, how it all played in together. But digital traffic log and your regular traffic log are two things that you really cannot live without this day.
No. And Adam, going back many, many, many years, the traffic log is the single most important document or resource or tool that you have, because it measures and tracks what are we doing with opportunity.
Right.
That's everything. That's everything. And now we have to apply that same level of intensity and tracking onto the digital side, right? What's our opportunity through the phone? What's our opportunity through the front door? What's our opportunity through our digital doorway and our digital showroom? Because once we start to track it, not only do we start to gain data, which gives us insight and planning and staffing and spend and all that stuff, but inside the data, that's all the incremental business that everybody wants, right? These are people who raise their hand by walking in, by calling, or going on your website saying, I'm interested in you, your store, your product, your brand, your culture, your price, something. Leads under management means I've recorded the lead and I have ability now to track how I'm communicating, what's being communicated with that stuff. We have to do that. Again, leads are critical. Yep. Critical. So
very much so.
That's the gold. The gold is in there. And, Tom O'Connor in one of his sessions, he's talking about people, some of the best salespeople that are around in any of these verticals, marine, RV, automotive, power sports, they make the most business happen through personal trade, which is great, but mining the data in the traffic log, the digital traffic log, the CRM, Lead Helm, Google Sheet, Hot Desk, whatever you want, that's where the stuff is. So I can't put enough importance on that. I have two things for you, okay? If you go to leadhelm.com, right, if you give us a little bit of information, right, we want your information because we're going to follow up with you. I'm not going to lie. We're going to follow up. That's what we're supposed to do. We teach that, so we're going to do it ourselves. You can download the digital traffic log. And you can play with it yourself, right? It's a fully functional spreadsheet. You can do that. You can download it and you can call us and we'll help you work with it. But we're doing a bit of a special for the next couple months, I believe, where I will lead it, Adam will lead it, Aaron Barney, one of the other co-founders, will lead it, an actual 2025 planning session where we're not just looking at digital, but we're really helping you understand, how do I approach the front end of my business in 2025? And we'll use that digital traffic log as part of that process. So you can see all that stuff on our website in the resources area and so forth. And as you're watching this or listening to this, you'll see some information further on where I would go get that stuff. So I don't know why you would not at least want to look at that information, because the other thing you can do on there is you can go through and you can look at a profit calculator that will actually start to quantify how much upside is potentially in front of you as you continue to get better at digital sales, digital conversion, engagement, so on and so forth. So I wish we had more time and more sessions to do, right? Because I was just kind of getting rolling up there, and I'm like, all right, we're going to come back after lunch and let's go ahead and keep this planning stuff. But we didn't have time. So we'll do that one off with anybody that wants to raise their hand on that one. Okay. The one announcement I think that's worth sharing for everybody, and if you're listening or watching this, right, please, this is in the best interest of, again, the industry. So NPDA partnered with somebody called Chet Burks Productions and Triple B Media. These are people with long track records inside of live TV idea, internet TV. Got a couple long-time folks out of ESPN that are on that team that have put this together. But anyway, the outcome of that, what is available today, is what's called Powersports World. Okay, and it is internet TV, 24/7, 365 global TV. And it is segment agnostic. It is brand agnostic. So you're going to see everything on there. You're going to see snowmobiles. You're going to see, old bike refurbishment. You're going to see sand rails. You're going to see dirt track. You're going to see all the different brands and so forth. And ultimately, we'd love to get dealers play that station in your store, right? It's all about exposing people to the cool thing that is this. And ultimately they get to a point where you'll be able to search by segment and say, ooh, I want the sand rail channel because that's what I'm really into, or whatever your thing is, it's going to be in there. But what do you think about that, Adam? It was kind of fun. We got to see some of it and we got to hear a whole panel discussion with the guys who created it. And I'm like, wow, this is a big deal.
Right. It's actually a very big deal. I think it's super cool, number one, having a platform and, or as they called it, linear television channel, right? It's going to be in all of those apps that we have everywhere available. It's on a bunch right now, Sling and a few other very popular ones. But I think the starting point at where it is and where it's going to be is just exponential. It's going to be amazing to what the capabilities and customer base that it can outreach to get people excited. Because when you think about that, right, again, you said it before, we're a want-based thing, not a need-based thing, right? It's dangerous. It's emotionally impacted on your family. There's a lot of things. But think about this also. When I was a kid, I used to watch dirt bike racing and motorcycles and snowmobiles. We had grass drag racing on snowmobiles in Connecticut, sleds with big studded tracks going like this down the freaking grass and tearing it up. And we would go watch that. And then that got me excited about things like that. And if, I'm dating myself, that was 30 years ago, but, it's what we had. But if people have that ability to put it on television, or kids have that ability to watch it on YouTube or whatever it is, it's going to get in their brains and they're going to be wanting to experience these things, or they're going to talk to their dad and their parents about, hey, maybe we can all go get a snowmobile and go riding it, or whatever the case may be. Keeping power sports in the forefront of people's minds and providing a television channel for that is amazing for our industry. And it'll help move more metal on that side without a doubt. And I really like the side that it's, it can impact a kid. It can impact a kid, and that kid might watch something about sport bikes and then end up racing later in his life. Like there's all these ways that could just really segue, and it's really cool. I think it's a really cool vertical for the NPDA to segue into.
Yeah. They put a lot of work into that. Again, it's called Powersports World. I've got one of the little flyers I'm looking at right now from the event, but you can get it on Sling, you can get it on Roku. They're suggesting StreamStack is another good piece. So search some of those platforms. And again, it's internet TV, so you get the app for one of those things, and you can watch that 24/7, 365. So check that out. If you are a dealer and you've got the ability to pull that in and show that in the dealership, I mean, why not? I think there's going to be an advertising component to that coming at some point. I don't know about the details, but check that out. That was a cool piece. Beyond that, look, this Dealer Connect is going to be an event that'll be an annual. Keep your eyes open. I would assume the next one gets bigger, gets better, so forth. We'll be at AIM as well, but this one was great as a first kickoff.
Yeah.
2025 we are now 2 days from November 1. I know it's hard to get your budgets and your plans done during holiday season, so reach out to us early, get your planning going. Leadhelm.com. You can find all of our contact information, resources, anything like that. We are here to help. And there's a lot of opportunity in digital, so we can be great at it. It is a known process. We don't have to invent this stuff. We know how to do it. Adam, parting thoughts for today.
Parting thoughts. Hats off to MPDA and, Bob Altoff and just what he's doing there and bringing everyone together, the unification to that whole side. I think building a community, and I think he nailed it too with saying we're not letting some big guy come in and buy it all out. We're keeping it, more family based, and this is what it's going to be. And I really liked that he said that, right? It's going to stay close to home. It's going to be a very big event every year, I feel like. And I think it's just a great place. If you missed out this year, definitely hit it up next year because it's going to be even better. But everything else, man, I mean, the education, the vendors that are there are partners. You could take away so much from each one of them. And I think it was just really cool seeing the innovation that's out there and what we're going to do with it, collectively. And I think dealerships are really seeing that now and really honing in and saying, hey, digital's a place that I need to be. If I can't do it myself, why not let these guys do it for me? Yeah.
Good one. We're happy to do it for you. But as I say all the time, if you've taken the time to watch or listen to this, again, hats off for continuing to try to learn and expose yourself to good ideas. We do it all the time. I sat in on as many of those education sessions as I could because, look, I'm still a student of the business. I want to know what's going on, and it's exciting. So thanks for taking the time with us today. We'll see you on the next one. In the interim, leadhelm.com for all your needs. Find us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.